Here we go. Welcome back to Live with Jane and Jody. I love it. Thank you all for sharing your cameras. Just so you're aware, we are recording this session. So feel free to turn on your cameras, jump in the chat session. We understand the awkwardness of Zoom. We appreciate your questions and your participation. Just remember that it is being recorded. We will post this later on our Sonoran YouTube page so that other people can listen into the questions in the conversation and be inspired as well. For those of you that don't know, I am Jane Voorhees, one of our admissions representatives here, assisting students as they're working on that application, really getting close to the finish line and ready for an interview, and then ultimately just preparing for enrollment and getting here for that first day of classes as well. I mostly work with candidates that are the later part of the alphabet, the M through Z. And you're going to meet Jody, my partner here in a moment, that takes care of everybody else. A little bit about myself. I've been a part of this Sonora community since 2007. So I've been around for a while. I really love the program. Obviously, this community is just amazing. So we'll get you here soon if you're not already admitted. All right, enough about me. Jody, you want to say hello?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jody, like Jane said. As far as the admissions rep, I work with the beginning of the alphabet. So, I work with last names A through L. I have been with Sonora, and I was just telling Dr. Suzelis here a few minutes ago. August will be my 20th year. So, I've been with them since 2006. So, been around for a while. So, I've seen a lot of candidates go through the program, become amazing alumni. Absolutely wonderful. I am originally from the Midwest. I'm originally from South Bend, Indiana. So moved out here. It's actually been 24 years ago now. So absolutely love Arizona. I know it's the heat, and they say it's a dry heat, but it's still wonderful. I absolutely love it out here. So welcome everybody. Like Jane said, please, ask your questions. This is for you. We enjoy it as well, hearing from the alumni and what they're doing. But it's mostly for you to answer all your questions. So put your questions in the chat or just turn off your microphones and just say, excuse me, and just let us know. Have a great time and we'll go from here. All right. I usually share a core value. This week I picked we do the right thing. So we do the right thing by being principle driven, guiding our actions through honesty and integrity, through honoring commitments, saying what we do and doing what we say, by accepting responsibility, holding ourselves and others accountable, by following the golden rule, treating others as we want to be treated. So, one of my favorites.
Absolutely. That's a good core value. Thank you for sharing that, Jody. Good choice. All right. So as we go in today, this is absolutely all about our guests, not Jody and I. So let me tell you a little bit about the alum that is joining us. Dr. Ted Suzelis is originally from Ohio. Apparently, it's Canfield, Ohio, about an hour southeast of Cleveland and an hour northwest of Pittsburgh. Man, I should have stopped by. I was just in Pittsburgh. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you should have.
All
Hmm.
right. So he earned his degree from Bowling Green State University, majoring in biology and a minor in chemistry. Graduated from SCNM at the time, Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine, which in 2001, and currently has a practice, Ohio Naturopathic Wellness Center. So we're going to hear a little bit about that. And outside of his practice, his hobbies include running for both football. Wait, I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Running for exercise and to clear his head, following Ohio State Buckeyes football, of course, and exploring emerging technology. In his spare time, he likes building small tech projects. Ooh, I can't wait to hear a little bit more about this. Um, there's some interesting notes here that we are going to let him get into around AI and things like that. So that's going to generate more questions later. Very fun. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Suzelis.
Oh,
Anything
it's a
you would like to
pleasure.
add? Um, Anything you would like to add to the intro?
Oh, no, I think that's a good intro. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, so let's just go on into what we all want to know. So, Dr. Suzelis, how did you become interested in naturopathic medicine? Where's your passion lie from?
Okay, so I have a pretty interesting path to get me to naturopathic medicine. So, when I was probably about 6 years old in 1980 when my younger brother was born with a severe birth defect. It's called gastroschisis. He actually had about a quarter-size hole in his abdomen where all of his intestines were developed on the outside. At that time, it was a very that he was a very severe case. The doctors told my parents, don't expect him to live, even, a couple of years. But my mother, she's very religious. She wouldn't accept that. She started praying, and she felt like she was led to a chiropractor near us, well, half hour away or so, and that did natural medicine. And so she started taking my brother there. He started getting better, and my mom thought, "This is wonderful. We need to let the doctors know that this is available." And, that was around 1981, and natural medicine was very frowned upon by the conventional medical establishment then. And so the pediatrician, when she told the pediatrician about this chiropractor doing natural medicine and helping him, the pediatrician's response was, "Get your son away from that quack. He's going to kill him." And so my mom could not believe that. She couldn't accept that because she saw all of the improvements in my brother. So that was my family's 180 switch away from conventional medicine. And we started doing pretty much everything naturally. The only time we would see a medical doctor was if we needed physicals to play sports or if we broke a bone from playing sports. Um, and my mom actually became a natural health practitioner in the early 1980s, and so she helped us a lot too. Fast forward to me finishing high school and deciding what I want to do with my life, and I didn't really know where I fit in. I knew I wanted to go into healthcare. I knew that natural medicine was my passion, but I decided at the time that I was going to go into physical therapy. It was at the time it was a career that was just booming, and so you could get do a 5-year degree, make good money, and I figured I can figure things out from there. Well, after doing 2 years of pre-physical therapy at Bowling Green, I had, 3.9 GPA, all the extracurriculars, everything I was supposed to have, and I didn't get accepted to physical therapy school at that time, and decided I had a big thing to decide there because I could wait another year and reapply, but I decided, well, physical therapy wasn't really my passion anyhow. So I decided to change my major to biology with a chemistry minor and started trying to figure out, well, what else do I want to do? And I thought about chiropractic because my family had used a lot of chiropractors in the past and had a lot of good results, and they do a lot of natural medicine therapies. But my sort of holdback on that was, well, they don't really get that training in chiropractic college. They're just doing the manipulation part. Um, I had considered osteopathic medicine because their philosophy is a lot more similar, a lot more natural minded than MDs, but they're trained the same as MDs, and so there wasn't really that natural medicine portion I was looking for either. And so I'm going to call this a God moment because when this was what, 1990, well, either the fall of 93 or spring of 94. And the internet was just coming out. I mean, I remember my freshman year of college, reading something about this new weird thing called email. And so, but I somehow I was on the internet and I found SCNM's website. The school was only
Mm-hmm.
maybe a year old at the time. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and there wasn't a ton on the internet back then. And I'm just amazed that I found the website, but I found out about naturopathic medicine because of the Southwest College of Naturopathic Medicine. And but there was a holdback because, well, naturopathic doctors aren't licensed in Ohio. And at the time, there was either when I started medical school in '97, I think there was either 7 or 9 states that licensed us.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but doing my soul searching, I decided that this was really my passion. Because if I were to go to chiropractic college or become a DO or an MD or something, uh, it would just be for that piece of paper. I would be doing it for a license and then go back and do naturopathic medical school so that I could get all the natural therapies so that I could help patients. And I decided
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to support my passion. I'm going to go to naturopathic medical school and I'm going to work to get Ohio licensed. So that's really my story about how I went to naturopathic medical school and became passionate about natural medicine.
Wow. Was at that early time, you knew we've got to work on licensure here. We've got to get more
Right.
regulation and awareness. I love it. So, did you apply to the other schools at all, or you found SCNM online and that was it?
So at that time, it was a very, very, very interesting time in naturopathic medicine because Bastyr, SCNM, and National all were moving campuses at the same time.
Oh,
All three schools were moving to a bigger campus.
wow.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and so I actually applied to all three.
Okay.
And at the time, I didn't know about Bridgeport. Bridgeport was
Okay.
just opening their school. Their first incoming class would have been when I started. And thank God I didn't know about them because Connecticut was so much closer. I would have just by default gone to Connecticut. The first two classes at Bridgeport, everybody either dropped out or transferred to another school.
Oh.
So that would have been horrible for me.
Mhm.
And of course, there was the Canadian College in Toronto, but
Mhm.
I didn't know how that would work with going to a Canadian school and whether, licensure would transfer and
Mhm.
everything. And so I
Mhm.
just wrote
Mhm.
that off, even though that was actually the closest school to me. Probably, it's a 6 hour drive for me to get to Toronto.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, so I applied to Bastyr, SENM, and National, um, and because they were all moving campuses, two of the three schools kept losing some of uh, my recommendation letters. So a poor chiropractor friend of mine, I had to like twice had to go back to him and ask, "Can you please write me another letter?" And he's like, "Ted, I'm 100% serious here. I wrote that letter." And I'm like, "I know you did, but I need to do it just one more time." And so eventually I got I was accepted to interview at both National and SCNM and hadn't heard from Bastyr yet. And so, being a just graduated college student that didn't have any money, I was living in Pittsburgh at the time. I actually scheduled the interviews on back-to-back days. So I flew out of
Oh
Pittsburgh
my.
to Portland the night before my interview, stayed overnight at a hotel, did my 8 a.m. interview, went straight from the interview, called a taxi to go to the airport to fly to Phoenix so that I could go to my interview the next day at SCNM.
Wow.
And interestingly enough, uh, you know, the information packet I got, it just had a very general map of the area in Arizona, and I wasn't familiar with Arizona. And so I ended up getting a hotel. Jeez. It was just one street north. I can't think of not
Watching.
Maine, but what's in Tempe. There's a
Mhm.
Best Western there somewhere. Um, but so I got on the Best Western, and it's like, well, the school's a block and a half away. I can easily walk, not knowing it's Arizona blocks. So
I was gonna say.
Yeah, so in a suit and dress shoes,
Oh,
in April, I'm trying to walk, well, what was probably at least 2.5 miles
It's probably
to
got 2
get there.
miles.
And of course,
Yeah.
I was about a half hour, 45 minutes late for my interviews.
Oh
And
no.
luckily, everybody thought it was hilarious. I mean, they were also very apologetic that, you know,
Oh.
this map, wasn't necessarily accurate, but uh,
I know.
so I did my interviews and so yeah, it was really nice the way they did the interviews at SCNM that time. I the day before I had done my interview at National, and it was terrifying. I was with just one person, I believe it was the president of the school, and I still to this day don't understand the interview because she kept asking me these questions that I felt were sort of esoteric. But when I would give an answer, she was expecting an exact answer. So I was so frustrated by the end of the interview, and so my confidence was so low. She finally asked me, "Well, why do you want to become a naturopathic doctor?" And I didn't have an answer. So
I
finally,
know.
she calmed me down, and I was able to answer it. But then the next day at SCNM, and I'm not sure how you guys do it now, but there was 4 mini interviews. So I had an interview with a student, with a professor, a clinic professor, a basic science professor, and then an administration interview. And they were all probably a half hour, 20 to
Mhm.
30 minutes. And they all went wonderfully. And I felt right at home at SCNM. Um, I found it was in April when I did my interview. So of course, in Phoenix, in April, all the flowers are blooming. It's beautiful. It's perfect temperature and
The
everything. And
weather.
so
Hmm.
just fell in love with the area. And my fiance at the time and I, we decided, okay, if I get accepted there, I want to go there. Um, it wasn't really that keen on Portland. And so I accepted when they finally gave me the acceptance. And eventually National did accept me too. And then after that, eventually got my letter to interview with Bastyr. But of course, I had already made up my mind that I wasn't going to go there. So that's my story there.
What a fun
Oh,
adventure. Oh, what a
yeah.
great experience.
Our interview process is definitely different now, but I
Yeah,
do remember the four sections you would go to. That's how long I've been here.
yeah,
So yeah, I am just curious. So, a lot of our students come to naturopathic medicine because, in your case, chiropractic, you're limited to manipulation. Osteopathic, they may have that mindset of a naturopath, but they still have that, mindset of an MD as well.
correct.
So when you're on the SCNM website and you're reading about the profession and the school and what we do, were you like, this is what I want to do? This is exactly what I'm looking for,
It
which
was
is a lot
because,
of our schools or our
right.
students do.
Right,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
we get the you get the conventional medicine training along
yeah,
with all of the different natural therapies that I felt like I needed
yeah,
to learn so that I could help patients.
yeah,
Because
yeah.
by that time I had already been doing natural medicine with my family for almost a
Hmm.
decade and a half. So I had a basic idea of a lot of what was going on in natural medicine and sort of had, a much better idea of why I wanted to, go to naturopathic medical school to get all those different modalities.
Right, right, right. I'm just curious also, what were you looking for in a school? I mean, was it like a location very important? Definitely different weather. But what were you
Right.
looking for in a school?
I had no idea at the time.
Okay.
I
Okay.
mean, I
That
was
was good.
22. I really had no idea. But, since then, I've had lots of, potential students come and shadow me over the
Hmm.
years. And my biggest thing that I tell people is you really need to go somewhere where you're going to enjoy living because all of the schools are, they
Exactly.
have very similar very similar curriculum. You're going to
Yeah,
learn very similarly, but
right.
you're going to be there for 4 or 5 years. You better make sure that it's somewhere you want to live for 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. Hmm.
And of course,
Exactly.
because of that, pretty much every student that actually applied to naturopathic medical school eventually ended up going to SCNM or Sonoran.
Yeah,
It's great
exactly.
here.
I totally
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah.
That's definitely
Especially
important.
if you come in April for the first time ever and
Yes.
you drink the
Right.
Oh,
punch. Oh, it's gorgeous. That happened to me 20 some years ago.
Yeah.
me too. Me too.
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean, I
actually, I
thought
think I
I
was,
thought the desert was like movies of, like in Africa desert. I had no idea what
oh,
the Sonoran desert was
yeah,
like.
I
yep,
agree.
yep.
I used to make
I,
that joke. Who would want to live in the desert? No thanks, no
yep,
thanks.
yep,
And then
Right.
yeah, you
yep.
come in April and it's like, what have I been waiting for? Oh, it's awesome.
Exactly, exactly. I think I came in May and oh, it was just gorgeous. And I'm thinking desert, I'm thinking tumbleweeds flying everywhere and
Right.
it's
Right.
just yeah, no place I want to live.
Right.
So, but I love it. I do love it. I absolutely do. Awesome. Let's see. So going to your program, was the
Mhm.
program as hard as you thought it was going to be? I mean, you kind of knew what you wanted to do, but
Right. Right. So yet again, I mean, I knew it was going to be a challenge.
uh-huh,
And I wasn't exactly sure what that was going to mean. And I honestly didn't think too much about it ahead of time because I didn't want to psych myself out.
right?
Uh,
Okay.
but what I found and what I've told potential students from the few that I've talked to since is yes, it's going to be more difficult than undergrad. But like
Mhm. Oh yeah.
take your basic science classes, your anatomy and physiology. You learned anatomy and physiology, probably you took a class in high school. And then you did anatomy and physiology in college, and it's the same information, it's just a little bit higher level of learning. And then that's the same with medical school. You're learning the same information, but it's just a deeper level of understanding.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so, yes, it's more challenging because you do have more information to learn, but if you're going to be able to get A's in college, if you put your mind to it, you're going to be able to get through medical school.
Yeah.
Well
Yeah.
said. Hmm.
Exactly.
Is there one portion that you would say was the most challenging, or do you recall?
As far as what was most challenging, as far as the schooling or
What? Yeah, while you were enrolled in the program, yeah, academically. Hmm.
okay. So yeah, so academically, um, really, I think it was just the grind. I think
Yeah.
it
Well,
was, it was, and I'm not sure if it's different. Do you guys have quarters now, or still like trimesters, or what are you doing
quarters.
now?
We're on
Quarters.
the quarter
Quarters.
system. Hmm.
So yeah, so we did trimester. I think it was trimester. So we had 3 semesters in a year. I think, or no, maybe no, it was quarters. It was quarters. I'm sorry, but just having to go all year long. You would get
Hmm.
a week or two in between, quarters, and
Yep.
then a month in August, and it's just a grind. I would say that was the biggest thing. Is it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Good. Hmm.
It's the
Yep.
schoolwork's challenging, but the bigger thing is just keeping up and knowing that you don't have a lot of downtime in between where you can really decompress.
Again,
Now,
very well
Okay.
said, very well put, the balance. Now, you mentioned fiance.
yeah.
Did you have balance? Did you get married while you were going through school? Like, did you have balance? Was there life outside of school?
So there was some life
Mm.
outside of school. Yeah. So my fiance and I got married on August break, halfway through the program.
Yep.
Now that month I would actually deem that probably my most difficult spell in naturopathic medical school because um, that was when the school closed down
Interesting.
in
Uh-huh.
1999.
Uh-huh.
uh, they pulled, everybody in all the grades, they pulled us into the big, conference room, And they said, as of today, the school's closed. You're not going to be, you're not going to be able to finish your degree here. There's nothing going to happen. We're in financial problems and the school's closing. So that was when Paul Mittman stepped up, and actually all the professors at the time stepped up, trying to figure out, well, how could we make this work? We don't want to let this go. And so, as students, there was a lot of calling friends and family for donations, and we talked to all the supplement companies. That all the other schools came in, supported us, because we were still trying to get full accreditation at the time. We weren't fully accredited yet either. And that
What?
accreditation, so this was in July and August. Accreditation was supposed to be finished by December of 99.
Okay.
And so somehow everything came together. Everyone, made it work. And with the help from the other schools, I mean, we got the full accreditation. Of course, I think at this time, probably Sonoran is probably the most financially stable of all of the schools. I mean, you guys, Paul has
Yeah.
did an amazing job when he was
Mhm.
president of the school,
Mhm.
really giving putting a really good foundation there, and everybody's done a great job. Um, so that was probably the scariest and the most difficult part of schooling there. Now, like I said, I was getting married that time too, and so I had to leave, Arizona to come back to Ohio to get married with the thought that, I'm going to get married, go on our honeymoon. We're going to go back to Arizona and, well, hopefully the school's going to be around so I can start back up, or we're going to start looking at transferring to one of the other schools. And
Mhm.
luckily everything worked out, and, the rest of the time as a student was pretty smooth sailing.
No wonder you paused when I asked about what was challenging. Wow, wow, that's a
Yeah,
really crazy
that's kind of a big thing.
story.
You put 2 years in, all the money, and then they try to pull the rug out from under you.
No kidding, right? Man, that's resilience.
Wow.
Like, I love that piece of
Like
this,
you
the
Oh
said.
yeah,
history of
definitely.
Sonoran University. Wow.
Hmm.
How
Yep.
cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. What
Exactly.
a, yeah, just neat experience. And then from there, like, yeah, okay, let's just get through this program focused on life outside of the college. No,
Right,
let's just get through it at this point.
right.
No kidding. That's
Yeah.
neat.
Mhm.
Well, all right, Jody,
Wow.
jump in here. Sorry,
So,
I'm just kind of rolling through. Hmm.
so Dr. Suzelis, back then, and I don't say that part meanly, did they
So
have residencies? Did you do a residencies?
I did not do a residency. So at the time when I was graduating, each school, there was no residency positions outside of the schools, and each school would accept 2 or 3 first year residents. So,
Okay,
my class graduated probably around 70 students, and there were 3 residency positions
got it.
available.
Okay, okay,
And I was also knew I was going to be moving back to an unlicensed state at the time, so I didn't even put my hat in for one of those residency positions because I just felt like, okay, I'm not one of the top 3 people that are going to get there anyhow. And it was, since I wasn't going to be in a licensed state, I wasn't going to be doing primary care or anything, and so I felt like it wasn't as important. Now,
okay,
at this
okay.
point, I think it's I mean, obviously there are a lot more opportunities for
Hmm.
residency, and I
Yeah,
really think at this point that if I were to do it again, here in 2026, I would definitely want to do at least a 1 year residency position. I think that's
yeah.
essential at this point. I mean, I've done 25 years of practice without that, but early on, it would have really helped me to have that extra year with the residency.
Mhm. I do agree. And we have quite a few of them. Like you said, we have quite a few residencies that are available now. So
Hmm.
even though
Yes,
in naturopathic medicine, it's not a requirement
right,
unless you're going to practice in the state of Utah. But
correct.
yeah, it is highly recommended. Did we have a question in here
Oh,
before
yeah,
we move
good.
forward?
There's a chat. So it says, "Hi, doctor. Would you please tell us what it is like practicing as a naturopathic doctor? What does a typical day look like for you? How many patients do you see per day? Do you have side businesses too, like selling supplements in your practice? Thank you, Sharon.
Good
Yeah, these
question.
questions are in our list as well. We were going to get to his practice, so
Yep,
perfect
yep,
timing. Let's do
yep,
it.
exactly.
Yeah, so as far as the day to day, right now I'm working 4 days a week. For a
Okay.
long time I was doing 5 days a week, and full days, and that's a lot, especially with the family and everything else. So I do 4 full days a week. I would say I see 8 or 10 patients a day because I
Oh,
do 90-minute initial appointments and 45-minute follow-up appointments.
okay.
So my day is pretty busy, back-to-back patients. I have an hour lunch break. Sometimes I get, not all of my appointments take that full time. So that's when I can catch up on uh, messages from patients that need something to help them out. As far as, my clinic, well, I actually have two clinics, but with both clinics,
Oh,
yes, we do sell our own supplements, and that's definitely very helpful as an extra revenue source. Um, it's what pays all my overhead, pays my clinic staff, and I know there are some doctors, especially that do virtual practices or do small practices by themselves, that they don't hire staff. But I can't imagine not having staff here. I always have one staff member when I'm seeing patients because uh, I'm in the room for 45 to 90 minutes, 100% focused on the patient, and I can't be paying attention to somebody's
the
walking in
phone
that
or
needs, supplements or the phones or everything. I would never be able to have any kind of life. So my staff is well worth the money of paying them to answer the phones, to schedule the appointments, to sell supplements. We mail tons of stuff out every day to patients, for supplements. So I just think that's really an essential part of the practice. As far aside from that, I don't really have any true outside financial, financially, other businesses, for me. I've been basically my sole provider for my family for 25 years. I mean, I've done little side things like done a podcast or stuff like that that never really made any money, but it was fun to do. But other than that, I really haven't had any other businesses aside from just being a naturopathic doctor.
are
Thank
you
you.
the only doc in the practice?
I
Are you by
actually have
yourself?
one other naturopathic doctor that's in with me.
Okay,
She's
okay,
she's been here for I don't know, but at least a year and a half now. I actually
okay.
met her at an AAMP conference. She was working in Portland at the time
Okay.
and managed to get her out to Ohio because her husband grew up in Ohio, and it was a good time for them to come back to his family. And so, yeah, it's been a great thing to have another naturopathic doctor here in the practice with me.
Wow, fantastic. Awesome.
That is great. And is she a graduate of Sonoran or of
He is.
NUN?
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Oh,
Dr.
she
Rachel
is.
O'Connell.
What's the last name?
O'Connell?
O'Connell.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness.
Um,
Fantastic.
All right. I love these questions are coming in. All right. So this is
Yep.
great. When you were a new graduate, a recent ND graduate, how did you build your patient network where you had consistent patients? Good question.
Yeah, that's always, every practice is going to be different there. For me, I had the benefit that my family did have a health food store. And so I opened up my practice next door to the health food store, and that helped some. I mean, it wasn't like that was a full big, stream of new patients, but through word of mouth and doing lectures and having a website, and websites did a lot more back then too because there wasn't as much competition. But it just takes a little bit of everything to try to get established.
Mhm. All right. You say, hey, doctor. I know you mentioned the difficulty of having shortened time to yourself during the program, but what relaxation strategy would you suggest when studying, preparing for NCLEX exams, clinical immersion, and handling life as a naturopathic student? Great question.
Yeah, so that's wonderful because uh first of all, I would say, you know, if at all possible, before you start naturopathic medical school, you should be trying to eat healthy, make sure you're getting enough sleep, and find some kind of fitness routine that you can stick with and be in shape because that can make all the difference in the world of dealing with the stress and the grind. You'll have enough time to get to the gym or run or whatever your fitness is, but definitely can make a make a big deal there. But and then on top of that, everybody's different. I mean, obviously things like meditation can be helpful. There are a lot of different supplements. If I mean, I always recommend if you're going to go to naturopathic medical school, you really need to see a naturopathic doctor before you even start.
Yes,
To at
yes.
least experience a few appointments with somebody. And so that's something that you should talk to them about is, well, are there any different supplements that I could be taking to help keep me focused and relaxed and to help me get me through that program?
That's smart.
Very nice.
Good feedback. Thank you.
Very nice. All right,
Um,
yeah, let's
Yeah,
let's
so I'm going to jump in because I had listed out
oh
these
go ahead.
questions right in this area. Like, is it a private
Okay,
practice? Is it a joint practice? I wanted to ask a little bit more about your scope of practice. Like, are you
Okay.
able to use all the modalities that you were trained
right.
in, or do you experience any limitations? Did the original curriculum back then include Chinese medicine and acupuncture? And then I want to kind of go into licensure, but let's pause there, like, as far as like what you do with for your patients. What kind of patients do you see? Yeah.
Yeah, so I see a little bit of everything in my practice. I mean, when I started my practice in 2001, I was one of two naturopathic doctors in all of Ohio.
Mm,
And so I know a lot of people that don't live near Ohio don't realize that Ohio's a fairly decent sized state. I mean,
Mhm.
there's
Yeah.
12 or 13 million people here. Unlike when I was in school, one of my classmates was like, "Well, why do you want to go move to a small state like Ohio?" I almost didn't have an answer for it. I'm like, well, what do you mean? Ohio has a lot of big cities. It's
mm-hmm.
a big place to, it has a lot of people. So I was floored by that. But she also lived in Arizona, but came from Kansas. But
Oh,
I find that out west, a lot of people get Ohio and Iowa mixed up, just like
oh,
in,
yeah,
when we're in the Midwest or the East, you get Iowa and Idaho mixed up. Uh, but so,
yeah.
yeah, where was I going with that? But what was the question?
Scope of practice, the type of
Scope of practice,
patients.
yeah. So, uh, yeah, so I was one of two naturopathic
Same
doctors
state.
in the whole state of Ohio. We're
Mhm.
not, we still are not licensed. And so, scope of practice, I mean, it's all basic naturopathic medicine. So,
Okay.
I work with patients on diet and nutrition every day, with supplements, with herbs. That's really the main things that I deal with my patient, that I work with my patients on. And I honestly tell people, I see colleagues in states like Arizona, and I wish everybody had to do at least a year in an unlicensed state where they were forced to do basic naturopathic medicine. No quick fixes, no IVs, no, cannabis cards, no, it's all just basic naturopathic medicine to really work on people's lifestyles and getting them healthy.
Mhm.
Because I think that's such a valuable base. That's why people go to naturopathic school, but then people get pushed into, well, I can make a lot more money doing IV therapies or aesthetics or different other things, and they miss what naturopathic medicine is really about.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah.
So
I've
yeah,
never
as
heard
far
it
as
like that.
a
Yeah.
scope, I yes, no, I can't do acupuncture like we were trained to do. I can't do IVs. I can't do any primary care. I can't prescribe. And
Mhm.
honestly, very little of that matters to me. Once we become licensed in Ohio, and we do have a bill that's in our, our house, Ohio house right now. Once we get licensed, I won't change my practice one bit. I will
Mm,
still practice the same way. Um, but as far as training, you had asked about the training. Yeah, we did have the Chinese medicine training too. So I was trained in acupuncture. Um, and it was, probably, I'm assuming pretty much the same, same training as what you have now with all the different modalities. But yeah, it's like I said, I do love acupuncture, and I've always tried to have as much as I can have acupuncturists that I can refer to or in my office. Um, but when I in Ohio, when I was starting my practice in the first 10 or 15 years of being in naturopathic practice, I actually considered getting going back and getting an acupuncture degree. But up until the last 10, at least the last 10 years before that, the acupuncture degree was so narrow in Ohio that it would have hindered me because
mm,
I have a friend who was in Cincinnati, and she was an ND and an acupuncturist, and she was working in a big clinic, and one of the front desk staff was stealing and got fired. But as this woman's sort of got you back to the clinic, she reported my friend to the medical board because she was practicing outside of her acupuncture scope. Because acupuncture at the time, you could only do needling. In fact, I had another friend who was just an acupuncturist, pulled in front of the medical board, and they looked her square in the eyes and said, "You can't recommend somebody to drink purified water because it's not in your statutes." Now, acupuncture in Ohio is a lot more broad now, but back then, I realized that acupuncture was such a small part of what I really wanted to do that would harm me as opposed to help me in practice.
Mhm.
mm.
Interesting perspective. I wouldn't have
Yeah,
realized that,
I
but
wouldn't
I
either.
definitely appreciate it. And I still love like your commitment to the core. Like this is nature cure.
Mm,
This is why we went to school. This is what we
Right.
do. This is what
yeah.
we're here for. Where I see the licensure, the regulation is bringing awareness. Like more and more patients need to discover the basic things that they can do for themselves. I am
Exactly.
loving this conversation.
I agree.
And I know we've got some questions. I want to get to the chat here, but the last one that came to mind for me is insurance. I'm guessing then you don't take any kind of insurance. Can
Nope.
people pay you with their
All
HSA
cash.
account or
Yep.
anything? All
Well,
cash.
HSAs and FSAs will usually cover.
Mm,
So I don't have any trouble with that. That's kind of a gray area where in unlicensed states, you don't just come right out and have it on your website, but
mm,
it'll get covered.
mm.
Yeah,
Yep.
Mm,
insurance, no, it's not covered.
okay.
And but that's the thing is, I mean, I'm in an area in Northeast Ohio that's fairly low income,
Mm,
and yet I have a cash practice for 25 years that I've been able to pay the bills, support my family, and so no matter where you are, you can make that happen.
mm,
And actually, you know, once we get licensed, if there was insurance coverage, I wouldn't be on insurance panels
Mm,
at all
yeah,
because
yeah.
I would end up making less money.
Mm-hmm.
Insurance, has its way of, enticing you in and saying, "Oh, we'll give you patients because, and
Mm-hmm.
get paid." And then every year they renegotiate and you get lower and lower compensation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so I I can't see myself if I were to go to an insurance-based practice, I would probably get a pay cut at this point.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. That's what many NDs have said. Many. Even here in Arizona, that, we have a lot of
Right.
NDs that practice here in Arizona. And many that we've talked to said if insurance was, if we were eligible to take. I probably still wouldn't,
Right.
So,
mm.
so yeah, yeah.
Interesting. Again, these are great perspectives. Good to know, especially for all you guys in the future of like what's your practice going to look like. All right, so let's
Right.
jump in the chat questions there. I think we left. How did you prepare yourself for starting your own business as an ND? Great questions, guys.
Yeah, so I just went in and did it. I mean, uh, there was, for me, it was I I graduated from SCNM in August. I moved, in fact, my parents came out for my graduation, helped us pack up the U-Haul to move back to Ohio, and within 2 weeks, I was starting to see patients.
Wow.
So, like I said, my parents had a health food store, so it helped me to do that a little bit better. Uh, but it also, from the very beginning, I started my own practice, and it was, I was, working on building that specific practice for myself.
That had to have been scary. That had to have been a scary process.
It
Was
was.
who was our career? Was Joanna Hagen a part of the program back then? Like, did you have any career guidance
Yes,
back then in this?
Joanna
Okay,
had
okay.
started probably a year before I graduated.
Oh,
So
okay,
we
that's
didn't get the business, prep with her that whole time, but that last year definitely we got some good information from Joanna because she's such a wealth of information.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Wow.
Full process there in the last year. Gotcha. All right. So thank you for your answers. Here's Sharon again. Do you have any guidance for other naturopathic doctors who also want to sell supplements in their practices? Like how to set it up? Do the doctors contact the manufacturers or set it up as a separate business?
So you have a couple of different options at this point. A lot of people go through Fullscript and have most of their supplement, they'll, get the patients, I don't know how it works because I don't use Fullscript. They'll log into the Fullscript, they'll include a patient, they'll list the supplements, and then the patient will get an email, and they'll purchase it from Fullscript and get things delivered to their house. I started my practice way before they had those services, and I still like having a full medicinary in my practice. And so the other part, Full Script, you can get wholesale orders, but also their sister organization, Emerson Ecologics. So, to better answer your question, you can go to each different manufacturer and get an account with them, but it's better to get accounts with Emerson and Ecologics in full script, and then you can place orders for a full, all the different supplement companies are there. So, and they usually you we actually don't keep a ton of stock overstock in our office. Certain things that we go through tons and tons of every day, we will, but there are certain products that we might only keep two bottles on the shelf because we'll only sell a bottle or a bottle a week or maybe even less, and we're placing orders twice a week because as long as you have at least $250 orders, you get free shipping. So we'll do two orders a week to make sure that we get refill everything that we've selling, and that way we don't have a ton of extra stock that might expire too. So, and but one of the reasons why I like having it all in office versus going through full script where they send everything out is um, I think it's a better patient experience. People can come into the office and purchase things if they need to. Lots of people in my office will call, or we even have a text number. Well, they'll take a picture text of the bottles that they need refilled, and we'll just ship them right out. And we're able to then ship without the big full script delivery, shipping fees. We get it a lot quicker. They'll get it the next day versus full script. It might take a couple of days. So it's just a better experience all over to help keep people on track. And I also get worried that when you send somebody online to full script, well, if your people are already of the mindset, well, if I'm going online, I better shop around. and then they're going to try to go to Amazon and find, a slightly better price,
Right,
and then you're
right,
going to lose a sale both ways. But,
right.
the how that works with full script is you will get a portion of that sale. So I don't know, 40 or, 35, 40, 50% of what the cost of the supplement is, which is equal pretty closely to what your discount if you bought things wholesale too. But I just find since I have office staff, it just works better this way.
Thank you for sharing that tip. Now I understand. So full script, you're like a distributor of all these products and
Right.
all the brands and stuff. That's a great tip. Great tip. All right. Let's see. We've got when working with patients on conditions such as PCOS, which could require multivitamin supplementation. Are you with a limited liability insurance company or any company like that? You're with that protects your business.
Yeah, so my business is a single member LLC, limited liability company. And so yeah, I have it set up that way. Yes, if you were to set up an S corp or a C corp, there's probably a little bit more protection for you, but as a small business, it just makes it a lot easier and simpler to be able to do an LLC and be able to then do do your taxes all together too. And so, I mean, granted, when you're setting up your own practice, you need to talk to, the lawyers and the accountants and everybody to make sure everything's set up correctly for you. But I would say that that's really the bigger thing is making sure you have the right people in place to make sure you're doing it right for your specific practice.
You have malpractice insurance?
No. Um, uh, and there were times where I did carry malpractice, but it's over the last several years, especially the ANP has really said that people in unlicensed, doctors in unlicensed states shouldn't be carrying malpractice insurance because essentially, by carrying malpractice insurance, you're saying that you're taking extra risks that you're not even allowed to take in an unlicensed state
Mm,
anyhow.
true. Okay,
Yeah,
that makes
it makes
sense.
sense.
Mhm.
All right, here we go. Can you share a story with us of a patient that had a difficult chronic illness or disease, thinking they just had to live with their illness or disease, but you were able to help them heal or better quality of life for them? Good questions, guys. Thank you.
Jeez, I mean, over the years I have so many of those. It's hard to
Mhm.
pull one out there. I mean, on a daily basis, I'm making big changes to patients and, changing their lives. So that's, geez, to pick one person to say this is the model patient that I changed their life. Uh, it's hard for me to do that because that's just not how my brain works.
Was
I'm
it
not
like your
metrics
first?
that way.
Was the first
Now,
one that you really saw the biggest impact, or oh, this is great?
yeah, someone, I guess one of my stories I like to tell people, in unlicensed states, you have people that become an unlicensable naturopath. They go to a correspondence school or something. They get you know, 6, 9 months or a year worth of online training and it's
My,
nothing. But I guess, sort of the story that I would tell with this, based on that is I see a lot of Amish people, patients, because I have some big Amish communities near me.
mm,
And I had this Amish gentleman come in. He was in his late 20s. He was, came in with having headaches, nausea, and dizziness. And, I started talking with him and, trying to find out his symptoms. And I found out that the headaches have been consistent, but in the last several days, they got really bad. And the same with the nausea and the dizziness. And because I have full medical training as a naturopathic doctor, I realized that that was a red flag for a brain tumor. And so I sent him to go to the ER. He got the imaging, found out he had a large benign tumor about the size of a baseball in his head. He had it removed the
Oh,
next day, and luckily it was a benign tumor, and and that was 20 years ago, and he's still perfectly
wow.
healthy. Where if he was to go to some fly-by-night natural medicine practitioner that didn't have medical training, they would have been treating the headache and the nausea
Yeah.
and the dizziness all separate. And this guy only had weeks to live before he would have died from this tumor if he hadn't had it removed right away. So I didn't actually do the healing on that patient, but because of, naturopathic medicine provides us a full medical training, I realized the seriousness of the condition and made sure that he got the proper treatment.
That's
Those are the
incredible.
amazing stories.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
What a difference you
Gives me
made in
cold
that
chills.
individual's life. Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't even need your tools, just the
Yeah.
knowledge. That's
Right.
incredible.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Thank you for sharing. Let's see. All right, we still have a lot of questions and we're down to 4 minutes. You guys, this is fantastic. Okay. Have you done any initiatives to fill the gap of those who may not afford your services, such as health drives or within your lectures? Also, what does your volunteer services look like as an ND?
Okay, so I mean, as far as low income, I really don't have a sliding scale, or I mean, I try to do the best I can with, I mean, I have patients that are living on just their Social Security or different things, and we try to make things as affordable as possible. But you can only do so much to help your patients too and be able to feed your family. As far as volunteer, I'm not sure if she's asking, or they were asking about how I volunteer in the community, or what that was, or if I have volunteer opportunities for my practice or what, but
You gotta guess. Do you volunteer in your community? Do you give free services to your community? You have like is that what you're asking, Megan?
yeah, so I've never really done that as far as that end of things. I mean, I definitely do a lot of volunteerism. I actually have two sons with severe autism, and so we, we do a lot with our local autism society to volunteer too. And that's where my
For you.
main volunteerism goes.
Mm-hmm.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right, we've got a couple left. My question is about selling your own herbal products to your patients. Do you do that? Can you do that where you're at? I will be in Texas when I finish, which is also not a licensed state. I make supplements and herbal products and would like to sell them to my patients as well. Good questions.
Yeah, so that's going to depend on your local health department. Each state, and even inside each state, you might have different regulations county by county, where when you're doing preparing of herbals, you have typically it's going to fall under like food safety guidelines. And so you may have to do special regulations based on what the health department expects restaurants to do. So like you may have to have a special sink and different things, but that's so based on whatever state. But I would expect that there wouldn't be any problems with doing that in a state like Texas. I mean, you definitely could do that here in Ohio.
Oh,
You make
great.
your own tinctures and products there, or do
I
you sell?
don't. I mean, there's been times where I've done herbal tinctures where I'll do a mixture of my own, but very rarely do I do that at this point. I don't have time. So
Mm.
I make sure to
Yeah.
find formulas that work for my patients, and I just keep ordering those and giving them to the patient.
The ones that are pre-made. Makes
Mm.
sense, makes sense. All right, one last one we've got. What are some advice you have for pre-med students who are planning to go to ND school? Thank you.
Good
That was the perfect
question.
timing because we've got 60 seconds. Words of advice, Dr. Suzelis.
Yeah, so just like I said earlier, well, I mean, first off, I definitely would see a naturopathic doctor in your area. See if they'll let you shadow them for a day or two. See what it's like practicing naturopathic medicine. Now, that's not going to fully tell you what your practice could look like because all naturopathic doctors, we do things a little bit differently. So, but at least to give you a sense of what naturopathic doctors in your area are doing, it's such invaluable information. If you can, one, be a patient, but also be able to shadow them, doctor, you're going to learn a lot of information about, is this a career I really want to do? And then on top of
Absolutely.
that, obviously, the schools, all have their prerequisites. You know what you need to do as far as the classes. And like I said earlier about the whole stress thing, get yourself healthy. That's one of the, along with, getting all your prerequisites and doing really well learning in undergrad, getting yourself healthy so that you can get through medical school as easy as possible is going to be one of the best things you can do for yourself.
Absolutely.
Well said. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr.
Yay, very
Suzelis.
good. This is awesome. This has
What a
been fantastic.
great session.
Great
Thank you all for your
information.
incredible questions. Yes, we love it when you guys are engaged as well. Dr.
Yes,
Suzelis, make sure you stop by next time you're in town. Come on over.
yes,
We'd love to see
Yeah.
you in person.
And if there are other questions, I'm
absolutely.
happy to receive them by email too.
Do you want to
Okay.
put your email in the chat?
Oh,
And that way
sure.
anybody could grab it real quick if they
Yeah.
wanted to. Thank you for sharing. All right. And then
It work.
next up in June, we are going to be interviewing Dr. Jenny Mahoney. So please join us on June 17th for
June
another
17th.
incredible conversation. There it
Yes.
is, Dr. Ted at Suzelis.com. You got it, everybody. All right, everybody, have a great week.
All right.
Thank you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
All right.
Suzelis.
Thank you. It
Thank
was
you,
a
Hi,
Dr.
pleasure talking
Suzelis.
Jody.
with all of you.
You as
Take
well.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.